Thanks to everyone who responded to my first two lessons in this mini-series on bass guitar playing. Your positive feedback has made me decide to extend this series. But if you're not a bass player and are keen to get on and develop your skills on the 6-string acoustic or electric guitar as lead or rhythm guitar player, then please don't click away from this video. This series is designed for you too. Learning to play bass guitar, even just covering the rudiments that I'm including here, is a massively useful way to develop your understanding and practical application of guitar music theory. Even if you don't have a bass guitar and just follow along this lesson using the bottom 4 strings of your 6-string guitar, I promise you will uncover a deeper understanding of music and an improved orientation on the fretboard on the 6-string as well as on the bass guitar. In this lesson we'll get you playing a great 12-bar blues riff to help demonstrate how we use interval names, that's the numbering of notes relative to the major scale, to work in 2 different dimensions in music. Now, I bet you've heard that pattern before. I refer to this as a 1-3-5-6 pattern. 1-3-5-6. If you followed the last lesson, then I'm sure you'll quickly see where that label comes from. Remember this movable major scale pattern? Start this pattern on any note on either the E string or the A string, and it gives us a major scale in the key of that starting note. So there I played a G sharp major scale. If I started it here, I'd get a D major scale. Here I'd get an F major scale. Here I'd get a B major scale, and so on. Now, this major scale is effectively used as a measuring stick for all sorts of things that we do in music. So getting back to our riff, when I call this a 1-3-5-6 riff, you can see that I'm simply referring to the steps on the major scale in the key of my starting note, which in this case is A. So I'm playing notes 1, 3, 5 and 6. Now in a 12-bar blues, we would need to change the starting point of our riff each time the chord changed. So over a 12-bar in A, for example, we would start by playing our 1-3-5-6 riff using the note A as note 1. So the simplest option is to use this note A at fret 5 on the E string. We play that 4 times through. Before moving across to note D at fret 5 on the A string, and then we use that as note 1 in our 1-3-5-6 for 2 bars, then back to note A again, also for 2 bars, then up to note E at fret 7 on the A string, down to D and back to A for 2 bars. So I want you to notice a couple of things here. Firstly, that the numbers we use to describe a riff pattern always relate to the major scale. And secondly, that the major scale concerned moves with the chord sequence. In other words, note number 1 in the riff pattern is always the root note of the chord that we're playing under. So far, I hope you'll agree this is all nice and straightforward. But if you've studied music for any length of time, the chances are that you will already have come across the use of numerals, not to describe notes, but to describe the relationship of chords themselves, one to another. So, for example, instead of naming the chords in this sequence specifically, like this, you may have seen Roman numerals used to outline the relationship of the chords to one another in whatever key you play in. I sometimes refer to this as generic chord notation because it has the advantage that it can immediately be applied to any key. So let's say we want to play a 12-bar blues in the key of C sharp. We don't have to concern ourselves with the fact that C sharp has 7 sharps in its key signature. We simply find the note C sharp, say on the E string here, which I can find at fret 9, and we declare that as note 1, thinking in Roman numerals in this case. I can then find note 4 by moving 4 steps up the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4. So note 4 is straight across from note 1 there. And when I need it for the third chord I'm going to need, we'll find note 5 2 frets up from there. So I've mapped out the root notes for the 1, 4, 5 chords, and you'll notice that typically these notes form an L-shaped pattern like this. In this case, a sort of letter L on its back, if you like. And that's often the case when you find a group of 1, 4, 5 notes. So those give me the root notes for my blues in the key of C sharp, and then I can simply play thinking in these terms, but what you'll actually be hearing is me playing these chords, or following these chords. So now I apply my riff pattern of 1, 3, 5, 6 for each of the root notes as called for in the chord sequence. And this will make a great bass line for a typical C sharp blues. I'm playing there are C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, A sharp behind the C sharp chord, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, D sharp behind the F sharp chord, and G sharp, B sharp, D sharp and E sharp behind the G sharp chord. But you don't even need to know all that, because by using this numeric approach, we steer around all the complexity involved in calculating key signatures and knowing the actual constituent note names of each individual chord for the riff pattern. Our 3-part guitar music theory course will help you fill in any gaps you may have in your music theory knowledge. And this should enable you to discover many more shortcuts like this one. Remember, knowledge, the more knowledge you have, the easier it becomes to learn guitar. As I always like to say, music theory is for lazy people. See you again soon.